Now, for me, I can't say enough about this author. I'm sure you know who I'm talking about as you clicked on this video, but Sui Ishida, for me at least, is the greatest living manga author in the world. I understand there is Oda and Inoue, but for me, Ishida stands above them. Tokyo Ghoul in terms of story and art are a 10 out of 10, and for me, what I think he has over Oda, in my opinion, is better art and better character writing. Now, this is just my opinion, and I know it's probably an unpopular one. My reasoning for putting him over Inoue is the fact that Ishida was creating the story of Tokyo Ghoul on a far stricter schedule. I mean, the entire story of Tokyo Ghoul and Re was completed in just under 7 years with a weekly release schedule, while Vagabond, Inoue's magnum opus, has been going since 1998 and the latest chapter released in 2015. Both authors are comparable in the quality of story writing, character writing, and art, with Inoue opting for a gorgeous realistic style and Ishida going for a far more stylized art style, and I personally like Ishida's style more. I am in no way disregarding Inoue though, Vagabond is one of my favourite manga of all time. Anyway, time for some background info. Sui Ishida is famous for Tokyo Ghoul, a series that had 2 parts being Tokyo Ghoul and Tokyo Ghoul Re. This series ran from 2011 to 2018. This manga took the world by storm, quickly becoming one of the most popular series to read. This was due to its gripping story of ghouls and humans struggling to coexist, and the gorgeous art style that complemented it. This manga was weekly and took a toll on him physically and mentally due to the long hours spent on the art. In the final chapter of Re, he left a letter that detailed as such, and how writing Tokyo Ghoul wasn't fun. He would take a hiatus after completing Tokyo Ghoul Re, except for creating the art for a video game called Jack Gene. He has also released a one-shot about this game that is very good. I recommend it if you want to read more from him. Ishida broke his hiatus in 2021 with the creation of Choujin X, a manga that has no schedule and gives him the freedom to draw when he wants and release chapters when he pleases. It is also a completely solo project with no assistance. The reason I switched from anime to manga was because 1. I hated waiting for new episodes and seasons to drop, and 2. I hated finding out how an anime would change the story of the manga for seemingly no reason. Tokyo Ghoul being the main reason I switched when I found out how different the anime was to the manga. I like getting the completely undisturbed vision of what the author is trying to convey, and Choujin X is a completely undistilled version of Ishida's vision and creativity that I believe will be a better story than Tokyo Ghoul when it is finished. Whether it gains the popularity and acclaim Tokyo Ghoul did, we'll just have to wait and see. For this next part, I'm going to give you a rundown of the first chapter, so if you want to avoid spoilers, now would be a good time to click off the video and read this story. The manga starts with our main character looking out of a window, wishing they could fly through the air and be free. The year is 1998, and these things called Choujin have wreaked havoc on the world, almost like an affliction on the world itself. Our story cuts to a girl chatting with an elderly woman on a plane. The girl is there for a fair in the place of her grandfather who hurt his back. She's there representing their farm. The man next to them is awoken by their chat. He asks to pass by but quickly becomes frustrated by how slow the woman is taking to unbuckle her seatbelt. He goes to strike the woman, but is blocked by the girl. She scolds him for trying to hit her. The man begins rambling about how that wasn't very beautiful of him, and on this job he has been doing second-rate work. And this is what first-rate work looks like. The man's hand erupts with smoke and fire, quickly setting the passengers ablaze. The girl catches on fire as well as the man erupts into a ball of fire and smoke. Our protagonist can see the plane from his classroom. His teacher isn't pleased that he's drifting off during her class and scolds him. This is Tokyo Kurohara, the main character of Choujin X. On his way home from school, he sees a woman being harassed by a group of men. He calls his friend in a funny police officer type way, and his friend responds in tow and arrives on the scene. He does a cliche superhero pose and tells the thugs to let the woman go. This is Azuma Higashi, Tokyo's best friend, and is one of the secondary protagonists in Choujin X. He is confronted by the thugs, but quickly dispatches them and they flee. After saving the woman, they talk about the plane crash that happened, and Tokyo tells Azuma he saw it catch a light in the sky. The news says it was a terrorist attack carried out by a Choujin. This is when we are introduced to the Yamato Prefecture, which is where the bulk of the story will happen. Azuma wishes the Choujin would do good with their power. He tells Tokyo he's going to ask his father if there's anything he can do to help with the plane crash. His father is a higher up in the police force. Later, the thugs from before are talking in what I assume is their house. The thug that attacked Azuma is complaining about his broken arms, when a man enters saying he can fix them for him. He shows them a syringe before the story cuts back to Tokyo arriving home. He tells his father and sister all about Azuma. Tokyo then heads to his room and thinks back on what happened with the thugs. He thinks Azuma went too far today, breaking the thug's arms. He thinks back to a trip he went on when he was younger. It was a trip to the zoo, and prior they are asked to draw an animal that's just like them. One of the kids says Azuma's strong like a lion. Another says they found an animal just like Tokyo, and point out a vulture. Tokyo isn't happy about that, and the kids point out that he hangs with Azuma like a vulture hangs around cooler animals to steal their prey. Tokyo is upset and runs away. Azuma finds him sulking in the zoo. Tokyo is upset people think he's like a vulture and says he could have been a lion too. Azuma then tells Tokyo that vultures can fly higher than any other bird in the world, and Tokyo finds that super cool. Now we cut to Azuma and Tokyo, who are doing volunteer work helping out with the plane crash. There were 200 survivors. After heading off to lunch, Azuma is suddenly attacked. It's the thug from earlier. His arms are completely healed as he shatters his casts. The thug continues to beat Azuma with ease. Azuma tries to fight back, but the thug brushes off all of his attacks like they are nothing. Azuma is surprised at how sturdy he is all of a sudden. The thug extends his neck and headbutts Azuma. He begins laughing with his new power, and he is shown as the mollusk Choujin. The thug is overjoyed, saying it was true, it can make you a Choujin, clearly referring to the syringe he was given earlier. He begins brutally attacking Azuma with his head, which I can't help but find hilarious. He then kills his friends and drops the 2 spare syringes. Tokyo grabs Azuma and tries to flee and swims across a small body of water to escape. Azuma then points out the syringes and he wants to use them as he thinks the Choujin will kill them if they try to flee. Azuma says he's going to use it with a crazed look in his eye. Tokyo thinks back to a time when Azuma saved him from some bullies. He remembers Azuma telling him that from now on Tokyo can help him beat the bad guys. He remembers agreeing to help in any way he can. Tokyo then grabs the syringe, surprising Azuma, and he says he can't use that. Tokyo says if he doesn't do anything right now, he won't be able to be friends with Azuma anymore, clearly feeling like he will be left too far behind or is lacking in something to be around him. They point the syringes at each other with the night sky looming in the background. Azuma says no regrets okay, and Tokyo replies with you got it. I'm illiterate when it comes to Japanese plant life or any plant life for that matter, so I have no idea of the significance of the flower in this panel, but I'm sure it represents some kind of change. At least that's what it looks like to me, with the leaves floating away. Of course I could be looking into this way too much, but anyway. The thug is still looking for them, wanting to kill them. He notices one of the boys behind a corner and approaches to attack. He successfully hits Tokyo, and Tokyo begins to morph and change, with claws and feathers bursting off him. Tokyo punches back, sending the thug flying through the air. Tokyo's face has morphed into a bird-like appearance, and this is when we find out he is a bestial Choujin. Now we get the title of Choujin X, and this concludes the first chapter. It would be wrong of me to spoil future arcs, so now I'm going to talk about some of the aspects of Choujin X that I loved and that fascinated me. But please read this story, as some of the heights these characters reach is amazing to see for yourself, and the arcs are unreal. Tokyo, Azuma, and Ellie's journey is amazing to see, but if you've already read it, then keep watching, and if you haven't, I'm going to start spoiling some more interesting subject matter. The Choujin are without a doubt the focal point of Choujin X. Their powers and status shape the world around them. The abilities grow with the user, and they can work and develop them in their own unique ways. The powers essentially manifest from a desire or personality trait. Like Tokyo has a fondness for vultures and is often wishing he could fly away, so his Choujin abilities represent that aspect of his character and personality. I like how the abilities mirror the character's mental state or mastery over their power. For example, in chapter 23, Tokyo, after his fight with Azuma early in the manga, he knocks Azuma over a dam, and before he falls, Tokyo saves him by creating wings and flying. But looking at the wings, it's just an amalgamation of hands, fingers, and feathers. This was Tokyo's first time doing this, and it's clearly the best he could do at the time. Later in chapter 31, during a training arc where each character works on sharpening their abilities, Tokyo begins working to grow wings and fly. After they are attacked, Ellie gets taken by Chandrahyume, the smoke Choujin who attacked her in the plane. Tokyo chases after her, and in a last-ditch effort to save her, he successfully grows wings to chase him in the sky. You can see the contrast in the wings. They are now full and look like a bird's, much different to the immature imitation from earlier. This happens for various characters and shows them growing fonder and more adept with their abilities. And as the series progresses, you can see Tokyo become more confident with his wings as he soars to new heights. Now for the secondary characters' abilities, starting off with Azuma's. After getting brutally murdered trying to rescue Tokyo, he has his powers bloom, and he takes this strange form with metal cuffs around his hands and a cloth around his face. I personally love this panel of the moon behind him after he gets his powers. He is the Iron Choujin. He gains improved physical abilities as well as the ability to manipulate his metal cuffs into creating various objects, from sharp knife-like objects to a full set of knight's armor and even a gun. As long as he understands how it's made, he can create it. After receiving his ability, he goes on a rampage, attacking friends and foes before directly challenging Tokyo to a fight. The manga mentions how abilities can develop around a complex someone can have, and this power was spurred by failing to save Tokyo. Azuma sees himself as this hero figure to Tokyo, and when failing and being saved by Tokyo earlier in the manga, he begins to doubt his standing in their friendship. During their fight, there's a flashback to Azuma arm wrestling kids in his class, and after easily beating the kids, someone says Tokyo should try. During their arm wrestling match, Azuma wins, but it's evident that Tokyo actually challenged him, and this set the seeds of doubt in his mind that Tokyo isn't as weak and helpless as he seems. And it becomes apparent that Azuma never wanted Tokyo to realize the potential he has. This is why his first decision is to challenge Tokyo right after becoming a Choujin. It's his final attempt to set the record straight that he is stronger and Tokyo needs him. But Tokyo shows the potential he's always had, defeating Azuma with one of my favourite panels in the manga, basically saying Tokyo was built different. Tokyo was pushed into a chaos state, which I'll touch on what that is later, but nonetheless, he was stronger. Now on to Ellie. Her abilities are very interesting. So initially, everyone thought that she just had an aptitude to become a Choujin, and that she was infected by Chandra's smoke, giving her smoke abilities. This information was interesting, with learning about the supercell and how people with it become Choujin, and the different drawbacks and side effects one can get from them. But during the training arc, something unexpected happens. In a last-ditch effort to stop Chandra from killing her, she grabs his arm saying, "I'm gonna live even if I've gotta steal everything from you." Chandra gets sucked into her palm in some bizarre burst of power. Ellie herself is completely surprised by this, even drawing the attention of Batista, one of the most mysterious characters in the series. After the time skip, she hones her skills as the Thief Choujin, showing her ability to steal Choujin powers and use them against them, like the insectified Choujin on the plane. This ability has game-changing potential, with her single-handedly turning the tides in the tower by using Cabriel's Golem Mastery ability. This power she stole gives inanimate stones and structures life, and they follow the will of their master. I believe in the future we will find out more about her mother, who had a mysterious past of being a famous thief. After years of pillaging, she returned with a baby, this being Ellie, and asked her parents to take care of her as she is dying. She then collapses, dying on the spot. Ellie vowed to live as a giver and not a taker like her mother did, and then some text on the panel reads, "Blood will tell, and someday she will come to do as she did." This makes me believe her ability was hereditary and awakened when she was attacked by Chandra on the plane. I would love to get more information on Ellie's mother in the future. She seems like a very interesting character. Now I'll quickly talk about some other Choujin I really like. I could go into greater detail on these characters, but I don't want this video to be 4 hours, so I'll revisit these characters in future videos. First, Palmer. She is the Zombie Maker Choujin. Her ability is that through the use of her blood, she can reanimate dead bodies, bringing people back to life. But her power has some caveats, like the body will decompose over time if they aren't continually given blood. Also, the more blood she gives them, the closer they are to their former selves. This plays out in an intense scene where to revive a key witness, she tries to give them as much blood as she can. And it is probably one of the more anxiety-inducing chapters I've read. Her teetering between life and death is seriously intense. Palmer can also communicate with the dead. But in a shock twist, she gains a second ability by taking a similar serum to what Tokyo and Azuma took, which gives her bestial Choujin powers. She becomes the Hyena Choujin, which changes the whole dynamic of the story with what Sora and the villains are trying to achieve. In the story right now, she's learning from Tokyo how to use her abilities, and I can't wait to see how her character develops. There's so much more to her character I won't get into in this video, but I probably will in a future video. Yubiko, an antagonist in the series, has such a cool ability. Her being the Mandala Body Choujin, she can create multiple body parts around herself and manipulate them as she pleases, and she uses this power very creatively. I think her fight with Azuma highlights how unconventional fighting a Choujin is. After being brutally beaten by Yubiko, Azuma tries to use an armbar on her with his legs also choking her out, which done right would win a fight against a normal person, but not against a Choujin. She kicks off the ground using multiple legs to kick at him. He then lets go of her arm to put all of his focus on cutting off the oxygen to her brain, but she then sprouts more heads, so he can't cut off the oxygen supply. She then uses those heads to rip him apart. That alone makes her ability so cool and has so many interesting possibilities. But there's still more to her. She is the first character we watch willingly go into a chaos state. Chaos is a Choujin's berserker state, and it brings them closer to being consumed by their abilities. It's interesting that this thing most Choujin avoid, she willingly uses as a power-up. She's an interesting character that I can't wait to see more of. Now, finally, Sato. He's one of the higher-ups at Yamato Mori, which is the organization of Choujin that protect against malicious Choujin. Our main characters join this organization and develop their skills. Anyway, he becomes Tokyo's mentor and pushes him to become a more capable keeper. He's a fascinating character who you never know what he's planning. He's cutthroat and ruthless, which I think pairs amazingly with his abilities. We don't know the exact Choujin name, I'm guessing it's Psycho Choujin. His ability is Psycho Share, which is basically telepathy. He sends messages to allies, which give him a blood nose if he has to send the messages to a large number of people. It puts a large mental strain on him. He also tortures enemies in a way worse than anything physical. He is so cutthroat, but dislikes rules that hold him back. But with Psycho Share, he can do as he pleases to them mentally, like what he does to Nari in chapter 17. He introduces his ability to her and then tells her exactly what he's going to make her see and feel, which was countless fly eggs hatching out of her body. He mentions that he exposes himself to countless horrific images to cultivate his imagination to better torture people. He tells her he will stop when she gives him the information he wants. Crazy to think that this guy is a hero, to be fair, but he is very much an ends justify the means type of character. This series has so many interesting characters and abilities, I'm barely scratching the surface of the amazing Choujins in this series. Now, something Ishida 100% approved upon from Tokyo Ghoul is the world building. Choujin X gives you tidbits here and there throughout the story that allude to pieces of history, legends, and places. I have thoroughly enjoyed learning about the world of Choujin X and the legends of its past. But quickly before I do that, I feel I should explain what a Choujin X is. I mean, it's the title of this story, and that can be summed up in one panel from chapter 24, where it says, "There is a belief among the Choujin that once every generation, a single Choujin is born with the power to annihilate an entire world. The world is essentially at the mercy of these beings' will. When they are wicked, they can cause great calamities, but when they are kind, they can act as a shield for their people." So that's pretty much what a Choujin X is, a being of unimaginable power that's born once every generation. Now, some of the legends of the Choujin world are Sora Tsuruha, the main antagonist of Choujin X and was the Choujin X of her generation. Queen McMahon, a vicious killer who was the previous Choujin X and started the Great Choujin War. Now the final legend I will speak about is Tissot. He became the ruler of Antoland after his father and brother were killed during the Great Choujin War. Anyway, I'll give you a basic rundown of each of them. Now, first the one we have the least information on, Tissot. Tissot lost both his father and older brother in the war, then in revenge led his nation into battle and ultimately awoke as a powerful Choujin, who later joined forces with Sora to end the Great Choujin War. We have only seen him in like 3 panels, but he certainly was an important figure of the past. Before becoming the hero of Antoland, he was actually unliked by his people, even earning the nickname of the Useless Prince. At the end of chapter 38, we get some more background information on Tissot. We find out he spent his days drinking and chasing women, much to his father's grief. He's certainly portrayed as a carefree party boy. I do find it funny how Ishida mentions that due to his lack of combat experience, he was killed, but it worked in his favour as his death awoke his Choujin powers, and he was certainly a powerful Choujin. His ability, Imperial Thunder, was so powerful that it could kill thousands of soldiers in one strike. After awakening, he repelled Queem's advances and later joined with Sora, and they eventually defeated Queem. Then he went back to his life of debauchery, fathering an unknown number of kids, legitimate and illegitimate, to the throne. Which I find funny. He goes from unloved to loved by his people and then doesn't have a redemption arc and just goes back to being a degenerate. Years later, he and Sora's relationship would sour, and he in an argument would tell her she was pitiable and to read her Bible to her dog, this severing their relationship. Years later, he would be killed by Sora, who saw a prophecy that he would become a mad king and attack Yamato Prefecture. So Sora killed him and all of his children. She then led a 2-year campaign killing over 200,000 people in Antoland to squash any chance of a rebellion. So that's pretty much all the information we have on Tissot, and I so badly want more information on him, and I hope we get more because he seems like a very interesting character. Now to Queem, who has one of the most insane Choujin designs I've seen. In 1924, in the world of Choujin X, he was terrifying innocent civilians with a stealth bomber with hands. How terrifying is that to imagine seeing that silently fly towards you? It's honestly nightmare fuel, and the text reading that he attacks innocents purely for fun, like a sport, he just strikes me as a terrifying character. Also, when I saw this scene, I was curious if stealth bombers even existed in our world in 1924, and they didn't. They were first unveiled publicly in 1988, so there's your history lesson for the day. But later in the chapter, this change is justified, as he personally designed many different machines of war and could take their form, so his power was some kind of transformation ability. One military historian credited Queen with advancing the development of weaponry by 70 years. It's quite fitting that Queen gave himself the title of the Choujin of War. During the Great Choujin War, Queen had around 300 Choujin specifically trained for war, and in the early stages of this war, they dominated. But despite Queen's success, he ran into one speed bump. Now quickly before this next part, I need to explain what raising is. Raising is where after a Choujin suffers a mortal wound, they can instantly heal it, but it comes with a cost. Physically it puts you closer to a chaos state, and mentally it's exhausting and painful and takes a lot of willpower to do. Now, back to Queen. Because of the war, his Choujin soldiers died over and over, raising continuously, and the pain became so unbearable to some that they just began accepting their deaths. Despite this, he pushed on with his campaign until he ran into the Prince of Antoland, Tissot. After being fought to a standstill, Queen realized how bad the morale of his troops were becoming when more Choujin began refusing to raise. He then changed course for Yamato. He chose Yamato because of their abundance of poppy fields. He wanted to keep his troops numb to the pain by getting them addicted to opium. Certainly a win-at-all-costs type of guy, but in Yamato, his past actions would well and truly catch up with him. This is a perfect segue to talk about the final legend of the past, who is still very much involved in the current story. Sora Tsuruha, a clergywoman from Yamato, who was once killed on one of his random hunts, now stood in his way and would not let him harm her nation. After her death, she revived as her generation's Choujin X. Thus, a battle between two Choujin X's ensued. And this panel just shows the absolute mayhem a fight between two Choujin X's causes. The panel itself is crazy, and Ishida was certainly flexing his skills while drawing this. In this fight, she showcased so many amazing abilities, and it's stated for the first time in battle, Queen was apprehensive. He was humiliated knowing that his actions created the very being that could counter him. Queen tried to invade Yamato for 3 years and was foiled by Sora at every attempt. He then fled, and Tissot formed an allied force with Sora, and in 1927, Tissot would kill Queen in battle. But Sora didn't leave this war unscathed. Due to her continuously fighting on the front lines, she raised over and over, having to pull herself to her feet even as her limbs were being torn off. This constant pain made her become addicted to opium. The opium kept her numb, and when she was numb, she was invincible. But when a Choujin loses their senses and sense of self, chaos begins to creep in. This is Sora as of the present. She can no longer retain a human form. This was the cost for protecting her people. All of this is background information Ishida uses to flush out the world and the past of Choujin X, and there's so much more I haven't touched on. It's something else I may make a video on in the future, but there's tons of small murmurs of other legends and stories of the past and regions we are yet to see. Like Bill Morth, the distant relative of Palmer, who was the third Choujin X we know of. Anyway, I think the world building in Choujin X is a massive step up from Tokyo Ghouls, and is a great addition to Ishida's storytelling. Now, for some of my favourite moments from the series to finish off this video. This will be quick, and I won't really dive too deep into any of these scenes. Chapter 38 was phenomenal for me, and is probably my favourite chapter so far, mainly because of this panel. Now for some backstory on it. Tokyo has returned from Iwato, where he earned the nickname of the Hero of Iwato. This is after a year time skip, where he hasn't interacted with any of the main cast. He catches up with Ellie, who asks about his time in Iwato. Basically, Iwato is this region that has been terrorized by a powerful Choujin named Hakan, and Tokyo and Sato went to help. Tokyo then tells Ellie about the Choujin he met and how they impacted him. Tokyo tells Ellie about how they were going to help them in their upcoming fight. Ellie asks, when are they coming? And Tokyo tells her, they are all dead. She asks about the picture in the newspaper that had all of them in it. Tokyo says he asked for that one to be shown with everyone instead of the one just highlighting him. That is when this panel is shown, and I love it. We don't get to see exactly what Tokyo went through during the time skip, but this panel does a phenomenal job showing the pain and pressure he experienced. Him breaking down with no one around him, Sato standing off behind him, who 100% was using this as a lesson for Tokyo. But this scene, I don't know, for me it just made me like Choujin X so much more, and this whole chapter was amazing, with the backstory of Sora and Queen's conflict. Now, you can tell Sui Ishida loves video games by some of his panels. In the most recent arc, first, Tokyo uses the waterfowl dance against Icy Ice, an ice Choujin who works with Sora. For those that don't know what the waterfowl dance is, it's the most infamous move from Elden Ring, which was nearly impossible to avoid. I should know, I probably died to it over 100 times. Then, later in this same arc, a villain named Beidou Vlad pretty much goes through boss phases. Quick info dump about Beidou Vlad. He is one of Sora's most loyal followers, who has essentially been her right-hand man for decades. He is a phenomenal general who was admired as much for his looks when he was younger as he was feared for his bloodlust in battle, earning him the nickname the Heartthrob General and the Fiend of War. Anyway, after he catches Azuma and his group off guard, he begins a solo assault on their group and really showcases why he was known as the Fiend of War. He decimates their force with only really a combination of Azuma and Bibi being able to stop him. He begins using his ability to regenerate from the pools of blood around him, slowly losing the little humanity he had with each new form until he looks like this. All these different forms remind me of boss phases from video games, and with the previously mentioned waterfowl dance, I think Ishida has been playing some Elden Ring lately. Azuma has some kind of psychological break or breakthrough, I'm unsure of which and would like to dive into theories another time. But whatever happens to him, it pulls him through the dire situation and then he transforms into something we haven't seen before. He decimates Vlad, and we don't know what happens next, whether Vlad is dead or not, we don't know, nor do we know how this will affect Azuma. I could go on about so many more moments I loved, but I've covered some of them in former parts of this video and this script is already long, so I'll let you all experience those for yourself. Well, this is the end of the video. I really hope you enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed making it. Hopefully my videos keep improving over time, so please give me your thoughts in the comment section. And I also hope I convinced some of you to read this gem. Personally, I think it's the best manga to come out in the 2020s so far, and yes, I'm including Chainsaw Man Part 2. I think this series will top Tokyo Ghoul, and I hope when this series is finished it will get the recognition and praise it deserves. Okay, that's it from me. Please like and subscribe if you liked the video. Bye!